Read this psalm every morning and watch God move on your finances. Napoleon Hill taught that the words you repeat morning and night with feeling become commands your subconscious mind cannot refuse to obey, and that command is already at work in the very life you are living right now, whether you have ever named it or not. Here is the law before we go one step further, and it comes from Napoleon Hill himself, writing in Think and Grow Rich. He said it plainly: whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. And Hill would stop you right there and say, do you see it? You came to this teaching hoping a page of words would move the hand of providence on your bank account, and I will not scold you for that hope, because the hope is correct. Only the method you assumed is incomplete. It is not the psalm that moves anything. It is not the ink on the page. It is the state of mind the reading manufactures inside you, repeated with feeling until your subconscious mind accepts it as settled fact. That is what moves. And once it moves, infinite intelligence begins arranging the means. Hill never called it magic, and neither will I. He called it a law, as dependable as the law that drops an apple from a branch. And if you have read a psalm every morning for years and watched nothing move, do not be ashamed of that. You are far from the only one. Most men read the words and never touch the state of mind underneath them. Tonight we correct that. Say it with me. I hold one definite aim for my finances. I feel it now as already accomplished fact. I close the door of my mind against every doubt that knocks. What I conceive and believe, I achieve. Again, I hold one definite aim for my finances. I feel it now as already accomplished fact. I close the door of my mind against every doubt that knocks. What I conceive and believe, I achieve. If something in you just went quiet and steady while you said those words, that is not nothing. That is your subconscious mind taking the order. Type the 2 words I achieve in the comments below, right now, and let it be your seal on what we are about to build together. And if you would have tomorrow's teaching reach you the same way this one just did, subscribe now so the next lesson finds you before the doubt does. The first key is definiteness of purpose, and Napoleon Hill placed it first for a reason, because he taught that the starting point of all achievement is not money and it is not talent. It is a burning, definite desire for something specific, fixed in the mind with such clarity that it could be written on a single card and handed to a stranger. Let me tell you the story the way Hill told it. A young man named Edwin Barnes arrived at the office of Thomas Edison, having ridden into town on a freight train, with no money, no introduction, and no clear credential to his name, but he had one thing burning in him: the definite decision to become the business partner of Thomas Edison, not an employee, not an assistant, a partner. And he stated it as fact the moment he walked through that door. Edison himself said later that he could tell this young man meant to succeed because he had staked his whole future on a single definite outcome and left himself no way to retreat. Years of humble work followed, sweeping floors, running errands, wading through seasons when the partnership must have looked like a foolish dream to any onlooker. But Barnes never once let the aim blur into a vague hope of someday doing well, and in time, he became the business partner he had named on the day he arrived. Now consider the ordinary version of this same law. A man wants to get ahead, he says so at the dinner table, he says so to himself in the shower, but if you stopped him and asked what exactly he wants, by what date, and in exchange for what service, he could not answer you. He would only repeat the fog: I want things to improve, I want more money, I want a better life. And Hill would tell that man plainly, you do not yet have a purpose. You have only a wish drifting loose in the fog. It is not ambition that is missing in such a man. It is definiteness. The wish has never been forced to take a shape. And a wish without shape cannot be aimed. The way a bullet without a barrel cannot be aimed. It can only be released and hoped after. Let me ask you plainly, what is the definite aim you carry into each day? If you cannot answer in one clear sentence, naming the amount, naming the date, naming the service you intend to render in exchange for it, you do not have direction, you have only motion. And motion without direction is exactly what Hill meant by drifting. So here is your work this week. Take one sheet of paper, write your definite chief aim in a single sentence. Carry that paper folded in your pocket the way Barnes carried his decision in his bearing the day he stepped off that freight train. read it before you leave the house each morning, and you will already have outdistanced most of the men and women walking past you today, still wishing, still waiting, still calling their fog a plan. My purpose is written, and I do not drift. The second key is burning desire. And Hill was exact about the difference between a desire that burns and a desire that merely wishes. A wish, he wrote, is a longing without heat. A burning desire is a longing fed and fanned until it becomes an obsession pressing against every waking hour. Most people never grow rich, Hill observed, because they carry only wishes, warm hopes, taken out on a bad day and put away again when the bill collector rings the phone. A burning desire will not let you rest until you have moved toward it. Picture a man named Harold, who owes $4,000 on a truck he can barely afford. He wishes he were free of it, says so at dinner, writes the number down once, and feels good for an afternoon. But Monday comes, and the wish has no weight. It does not move his hand toward a second job. It sits on him the way a coat sits on a hook, worn only when convenient. Now picture his neighbor Ruth, who owes the very same amount, but has made it her definite aim, written down, dated, read aloud morning and night. Her desire has become an obsession in Hill's own sense, not a sickness but a pressure that will not let her rest. She takes the extra shift, she skips the purchase that would have felt good for an hour. Within a year, the debt Harold still merely wishes away is the debt Ruth has already erased. One desire was comfortable and therefore powerless. The other was uncomfortable and therefore alive. Think of Edison again, failing past 10,000 experiments before the lamp finally held its light. A man with a mere wish quits at the 100th failure. A man with a burning desire treats the 10,000th as one more piece of information on the way to the answer. Hill taught that desire becomes gold through 6 definite steps. Fix the exact amount you desire. Decide what you will give in return. Set a definite date. Make a definite plan and begin at once. Write the whole statement down and read it aloud twice daily with feeling, seeing yourself already in possession. That is not decoration, that is engineering, because a desire read aloud twice a day with feeling stops being a wish and presses itself into the subconscious mind, where it can be transmuted into its physical equivalent. Let me ask you plainly, is your desire hot enough yet to survive a bad Tuesday? If it cools the moment a bill arrives, it was never burning, it was only warm. So heat it again tonight. Read your written aim aloud before you sleep, and mean every word of it. My desire burns, and it does not cool with the weather. The third key is faith, and Hill was careful here, in a way most teachers are not. He did not say faith falls on a man from the sky like weather. He said faith is a state of mind that can be manufactured, deliberately, through the repetition of instructions to the subconscious mind, through what he called auto-suggestion. This is the very practice hiding inside the title of this teaching. When you read a psalm every morning hoping to watch God move on your finances, you are closer to Hill's law than you may realize. Because Hill taught that infinite intelligence responds not to the words themselves, but to the emotionalized belief behind them. The subconscious mind, he said, does not distinguish between a thought fed to it in fact and a thought fed to it in vivid imagination, mixed with feeling. It acts on whichever thought is dominant. So if you read a page every morning in a flat voice, while your mind is already convinced the bill will go unpaid, the subconscious accepts the doubt, because the doubt is what carries the feeling. That is the piece most people miss. It is not the reading, it is not the ink, it is the belief that rides underneath the reading. Let me put a face on this. Picture a shopkeeper behind a small counter, watching the register come up short 3 months running, and every morning before he unlocks the door, he reads a printed prayer taped to the wall beside the till. His lips move through the same words his father taught him, and nothing changes, because his eyes read one thing, while his chest is already braced for the same short register. That is a man reading a psalm with his voice, and reading defeat with his feeling. And the subconscious mind always obeys the feeling, not the voice. Now picture that same man instead writing his own plain sentence, naming the exact figure he intends to clear each month, naming the date, naming the better service he intends to give his customers in exchange for it. and reading that sentence aloud before he unlocks the door, seeing the fuller register in his mind as though it were already counted, feeling the relief of it in his chest before a single customer has walked in. That is an entirely different instruction reaching the subconscious mind. Same lips, same morning, same counter. An entirely different result waiting to be built. This is the exact method Hill gave in his own words. Write your own statement of your definite chief aim, plainly, in your own words, naming the amount and the date and the service you intend to render. Read it aloud, morning and night, and as you read it, see yourself already in possession of the money, feel the gratitude, feel it as already accomplished. Repeat this daily without missing a single reading, because faith is not built in one recitation, it is built the way a path is built through a field. By walking the same line every day until the grass no longer grows there. Do that for 30 days, and tell me the state of your own mind has not changed. That changed state of mind is what moves. That is what Hill meant when he wrote that whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. Watch that state of mind, cultivated daily, and you will watch your circumstances rearrange themselves around it. Not by miracle, in the way idle men imagine miracles, but by the plain working of a law as steady as sunrise. And here is the plain test you can apply to your own morning ritual starting tomorrow. Ask yourself honestly, as you read your own words, whether your chest believes them or merely your voice recites them, because the shopkeeper's mistake is the most common mistake there is, and it can be corrected the very next sunrise you choose to correct it. I believe what I have written, and belief is already at work. Before we go further, let me tell you plainly that this daily practice, the written aim, the twice daily reading aloud, is precisely the discipline built into what we call the definite aim method, a short daily companion many of you have asked me to put in writing. We will speak more of it before we close, but for now, let us continue. The fourth key is the subconscious mind, and the law Hill taught here is exacting. The subconscious acts only upon thought that has been mixed with emotion, not upon thought alone, and not upon thought you merely observed passing through your head without feeling attached to it. Let me walk you through an ordinary day so you can see this law working whether you notice it or not. At 7 in the morning, you wake, and your first thought is the bill on the counter, and you feel a small tightening in the chest. That thought, fed with feeling, goes down. At 8, you drive to work replaying an old argument, feeling the heat of it all over again. That thought, fed with feeling, goes down too. At noon, a coworker mentions a promotion someone else received, and a flash of envy passes through you. That goes down. At 6, you come home tired, turn on the television, and let 2 hours of manufactured anxiety pour into you from the news. Felt, absorbed, and it goes down. By the time you fall asleep, you have fed your subconscious mind a dozen instructions, almost none of them chosen on purpose, and every one of them carrying feeling. This is what Hill meant when he warned that the subconscious mind will act on the seeds you drop into it, whether you drop them deliberately or carelessly. It does not distinguish between a seed you meant to plant and a weed that blew in on the wind. It grows whatever has feeling attached to it. Hill went further still and described the mind as a station broadcasting outward and receiving inward at once, tuned, always, to whatever emotion you are holding at the moment. Tune it to fear, and it receives more to fear about. Tune it to a definite aim held with faith, and it begins, quietly, to receive the ideas and contacts and openings that aim requires, not by miracle, but because a mind held steady on one signal stops wasting its hours chasing every weak static that drifts past it. So pause for a moment and pick one real feeling you allowed to take root today, one worry, one grievance, one flash of fear, and ask yourself honestly whether you would have chosen it if you had been standing guard at the gate. It is not that the day was against you. It is that the gate was left open. Hill's answer to this was not complicated. Close the mind deliberately against negative influences the way you would close a door against a draft. Choose the thought you feed with feeling before the day chooses it for you. Read your written aim in the morning before the bill has a chance to speak first, and read it again at night after the news has had its say, so that the last seed planted before sleep is the one you selected, not the one that ambushed you. Guard the gate at sunrise, and guard it again at lamplight, and the field will grow only what you planted there on purpose. I guard the gate of my own mind, and I choose what takes root. Subscribe now, so tomorrow's teaching has a way of reaching you. It takes one moment, and it keeps this whole path connected for you. The fifth key is persistence, and this is the key Hill weighed the heaviest of all, because he had watched brilliant plans, burning desires, and written aims collapse for the single want of this one quality. He wrote it plainly: persistence is to the character of man as carbon is to steel. And I want you to sit with that a moment. Carbon alone is soft. Steel alone does not exist without it. It is the persistence mixed into the character that makes the whole structure hold weight under pressure. And let me say it a second way before we move on. A man can own every other quality Hill ever taught: a burning desire, a written aim, a faith rehearsed morning and night, and still lose everything for the lack of this one ingredient. Because persistence is not a feeling you wait to arrive, it is a decision you renew on the mornings when no feeling shows up at all. First, consider the story Hill told of a man named R.U. Darby, who caught gold fever in the hills and sank a shaft, and struck a vein, and quietly bought the machinery to work it. And then the vein vanished, as veins sometimes do, and Darby dug on a while longer, found nothing, and finally sold the machinery for pennies to a junk dealer, and went home. That junk dealer, before touching a shovel, brought in an engineer, who studied the old shaft and told him the vein had only faulted, not vanished, and that it lay exactly 3 feet from where Darby had stopped digging. 3 feet, and the junk man took out millions from that ground. Darby, to his credit, never forgot the lesson, and he later said that he had lost a fortune, not because the gold was not there, but because he stopped 3 feet short of it. And let this teach you the plain fact underneath the story. Temporary defeat looks exactly like final defeat from the inside. There is no signal, no bell, no voice announcing that the vein is only 3 feet further. The only difference between the man who finds it and the man who walks away is that one of them kept turning the handle a little longer. Now let me bring that same 3 feet into a life you might recognize better than a gold mine. Think of the man who sends out application after application, 30 of them, 40 of them, and hears nothing back but silence. And on the 41st morning he tells himself the market is closed to him. He does not know, he cannot know, whether the very next letter he might have sent was the one that would have opened the door. Think of the woman building a small business from her kitchen table, who has poured a year into it, who is tired in a way sleep does not fix, and who begins to suspect the whole idea was foolish from the start. She cannot see, from where she stands, whether she is 3 feet from the vein or 30 miles from it, and neither can you, from inside your own defeat, tell the difference between the failure that ends a thing and the failure that is only clearing the last of the rock before the gold second. Consider what Hill taught about the 6 ghosts of fear: the fear of poverty, the fear of criticism, the fear of ill health, the fear of loss of love, the fear of old age, and the fear of death. He called them ghosts on purpose, because he had come to see that not one of them has any body of its own. The fear of poverty whispers that you were never meant for more than you already have. The fear of criticism keeps a man's plan folded in his pocket because a neighbor might laugh at it. The fear of ill health invents tomorrow's collapse before it has arrived. And each of these ghosts does the same single piece of work. It convinces a man to stop digging 1 shovel short of the vein, and Hill's answer was not to fight the ghost with more fear, but to see plainly that a ghost, being a state of mind manufactured by neglect, can be unmade the same way faith is made, by replacing it, deliberately, with a decision held firmly until the ghost has nothing left to stand on. Third, consider the mastermind, which Hill described as 2 or more minds working in harmony toward a definite end. And he said that when such harmony is genuine, a third invisible force enters the alliance, greater than the sum of the 2 minds alone. He told the story, as it was told to him, of Andrew Carnegie surrounded by a group of some 20 men whose combined and coordinated knowledge and effort he used to build an empire in steel. No one of those 20 men held the whole plan in his head alone. The plan lived in the harmony between them. And here is the piece that belongs to persistence especially. A man alone grows tired. A man alone begins to believe his own doubts, because there is no other voice in the room to answer them. But a man bound in true harmony with even one other steady mind finds that when his own persistence flags for a day, the other mind holds the line, and the alliance itself outlasts either man's private weariness. This was no accident and no mysticism to Hill. It was a definite principle, available to a poor man with one trusted partner exactly as it was available to Carnegie with 24th. And last, understand what Hill meant when he said every adversity carries within it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. He did not mean that failure feels good. He meant that failure delivers. Hidden in its wreckage, information no success could have taught you. The lost job that forces a man to build the business he had been too comfortable to start. The failed venture that teaches the one flaw that would have sunk a much larger venture later. Temporary defeat is tuition, paid in advance, for a lesson your definite purpose will need further down the road. And the man who quits at the moment of defeat never collects the lesson he already paid for. He only pays the price and walks away before the goods are delivered. Pause for a moment now and pick one real defeat from your own life. One door that closed, one plan that collapsed, and ask yourself honestly what it taught you that you still carry. Because if you can name the lesson, the defeat was never wasted, it was only unfinished. So let me ask you plainly, where in your own life have you already paid the tuition of defeat and walked away before class began? Go back to that written aim of yours this week, and if it faltered once, do not read that as evidence it was wrong. Read it as Darby's 3 feet, and pick the handle back up. I stand at the 3 feet, and I do not put down the shovel. The 6th key is decision, and Hill studied hundreds of men who had accumulated fortunes and found nearly every one of them shared the habit of reaching decisions promptly and changing them, if ever, slowly, while the men who failed reached decisions slowly, if at all, and changed them often and quickly. He called the opposite of decision by its true name, drifting, and he warned that drifting is the great destroyer, not dramatic failure, not sudden catastrophe, simply the quiet habit of never quite deciding, of reading the psalm today and forgetting it tomorrow, of writing the definite aim and losing the paper in a drawer, of feeling the burning desire on Monday and letting the television cool it by Friday. Let me show you how ordinary this drifting looks, because it never announces itself with a crisis. Picture a man who resolves on a Sunday night that this will be the week he finally writes his definite aim on paper, and Monday arrives with its noise, and he tells himself tonight after supper, and Tuesday arrives with its own noise, and he tells himself tonight again, and by Sunday the week is gone, and nothing was decided at all, only postponed, and postponed again, and a year built entirely of such weeks is what Hill meant by a wasted life, not a ruined one, simply an undecided one. A drifter is not a bad man, Hill was careful to say. A drifter is simply a man who has not yet made up his mind, and the tragedy is that infinite intelligence, and the subconscious mind, and every law we have named tonight, all stand ready to act, but they act on a decision, not on a maybe. A decision closes a door behind you so that retreat costs more than advancing, and Hill noticed that the men who grew rich had all, at some traceable moment, closed such a door. Edwin Barnes closed it the day he refused to leave Edison's office without a task. Darby's junk dealer closed it the day he hired the engineer instead of walking away a second time. Decision is simply the moment a man stops asking whether and starts asking how. So here is the last plain instruction. Decide, today, before you close this video, that you will read your written aim morning and night, that you will close your mind against the 6 ghosts, that you will hold the handle 3 feet past the point where quitting feels reasonable. That decision, made once and held to, is worth more than 100 grand intentions made and abandoned. The title of this teaching told you to read your psalm every morning and watch it move, and I have kept that promise honestly with you tonight. It is not the page that moves anything, it is the decision, backed by feeling, repeated with faith, held through temporary defeat, that moves. Watch it, and you will see it move. I decide today, and I hold the decision without drifting. Here is the whole picture. It was never 6 separate keys. It was one key turning further with each strike. Definiteness of purpose gave the burning desire something to attach to. The burning desire gave the written statement its heat. The written statement read aloud gave the subconscious mind a seed worth planting. The guarded subconscious gave persistence something worth defending through temporary defeat. And persistence, defended long enough, is simply decision refusing to drift. It is not that the psalm moves God. It is that the reading, repeated with feeling, moves you, and once you move, in mind first and then in action, infinite intelligence has material to work with that it never had before, replies. And if you want this turned from a single teaching into a daily discipline, I have put the whole method into a short daily companion called the Definite Aim Method, 6 short pages, the written statement, the morning and evening reading, the guard against the 6 ghosts, laid out so you spend 10 minutes a day instead of guessing at it alone. It is priced modestly, under $20, backed by a plain 30-day refund if it does you no good. You will find the link in the description below, and I built it because a scattered man rarely finishes what a guided man finishes on schedule. Now let this be settled between us tonight. I hold one definite aim for my finances. I feel it now as already accomplished fact. I close the door of my mind against every doubt that knocks. What I conceive and believe, I achieve. Read it tomorrow morning the way you read it just now, with feeling, and watch, quietly, faithfully, patiently, everything begin to move.